The NHL free agent period's in full swing here. Teams are able to meet with all kinds of players, and there's still all kinds of trades expected to be taking place as well. In today's video, we're going to give you all the latest rumors around the latest trade talk and free agent rumors as well. We'll get into all that coming up next. Welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. Now, we have a lot to go over today. There's all kinds of rampant speculation around the NHL when it comes to trades and free agent signings. It's a very, very busy time right now. We've had a lot of trade activity, and of course, with players being in that free agent interview period right now, there's all kinds of teams and players meeting to talk about potential contracts. Of course, we're at a time when speculation is really running wild here. Now, let's get started with the Carolina Hurricanes and Sebastian Aho. There's been some talk here that we've seen on Twitter indicating that Sebastian Aho's recent contract offer from the Canes was an 8-year deal at only $6 million per season, which certainly seems to be extraordinarily low. I mean, if you take a look at what a lot of the other RFAs that are likely going to be getting for contracts and where Aho kind of ranks amongst them, that's really, really low, and it's going to be nowhere near getting things done. If you caught one of my recent videos here discussing the top potential targets for an offer sheet, I discussed the possibility that Aho would be a prime target from other teams that do have some concerns over Tom Dundon, the owner of the Canes' willingness to spend here. Of course, he took a major hit recently where he lost $70 million in that football investment. So obviously I'm wondering if that might kind of cut back what he's willing to spend on his hockey team here. Obviously 6 times 8 is not going to get it done for Sebastian Aho, and they're going to have a long ways to go to come to terms on a new contract unless they up that offer, or it could risk being a prime candidate here for an offer sheet here, in my opinion. We also have the latest article from Elliot Friedman's 31 Thoughts blog, and this is going to be his last blog here for the summer. He'll pick things back up in the fall, so obviously we'll see here what he's talking about in his latest article. One of the main players he talks about is Joe Pavelski, and the fact that he's been meeting with other teams. Some of Pavelski's comments kind of indicate that, you know, he's certainly not looking back at San Jose as being completely out of the picture here, but I think he sounds like he's a little bit disappointed in the fact that they don't have an agreement in place to keep him in San Jose. But Pavelski apparently is very interested in going to a team that's close to winning, and he feels that Tampa and Dallas are teams that might have an inside edge. There was previous interest mentioned from Chicago, which I talked about before, but as of right now, Pavelski and the Hawks have not had a meeting, and right now we can't say for sure that there's going to be one. But apparently there's also interest, like I said, from Arizona, and then Dallas and Tampa are being mentioned as well. I wouldn't completely rule out Minnesota. There's another team that likely tries to land one of the bigger name free agents here as well. But Joe Pavelski's getting a lot of interest. The big thing's probably going to be the term. I know he's probably looking for at least a 3-year contract, and it looks as though San Jose might have been wanting to go more like a 2-year term, which is kind of what we're believed to be one of the sticking points here. Kind of what we saw Patrick Marleau go through with the Sharks a few years ago, which he ended up getting that 3rd year going to Toronto. Of course, we've seen how that worked out. He really only played for 2 anyway. But either way, we'll see what happens with Pavelski, but he is certainly talking to other teams. There's lots of interest out there, and there's no guarantee by any means that he returns to the Sharks. Now, we're led to believe in this article as well that there's tons of interest in Corey Perry, especially where he's likely going to be signing for a fairly short term and a fairly cheap contract. He lists up to 12 different teams showing interest and is willing to include Montreal and Pittsburgh in that conversation. I think Perry kind of makes sense for both teams. There's a lot of teams that really, I think, could take the gamble here to take the chance on him. Many of these teams that are out there looking for scoring on the wings certainly could use some size and scoring. Of course, we saw what the Blues went through here at the Stanley Cup. They're a fairly heavy team. Outside of Pittsburgh and Montreal, Friedman also lists teams like Dallas and Nashville being interested as well. Some of these teams obviously have other moves they probably need to make before they can commit to Corey Perry, but he is garnering lots of interest out there. There's no doubt he's likely going to get a 1 or 2 year deal around $1 or $2 million, something like that, and likely land with a number of teams that are talking to him right now. So we'll see what happens. There's really no front runner, I think, at this point, but lots of interest out there. Now, he's also reporting that the Calgary Flames are still looking to trade forward Michael Frolik. Now, of course, this is something that had come up a while back, but of course has never happened. The Flames certainly do have some other moves that they're looking to make this summer. They certainly have some questions around their goaltending as well, which we're going to get into here momentarily. It's also no secret they'd love to trade forward James Neal in that 5-year deal that they signed last year, and things did not go well. But that's going to prove to be very tough to do. But Frolik is certainly a player that's been out there for some time. I wouldn't completely rule out the possibility of Sam Bennett as well, but Frolik's the main player mentioned in this article, and he believes that the New Jersey Devils may have expressed interest and could be a potential landing spot for Frolik should the Flames move ahead. Now, as we know, Sergei Bobrovsky's basically been linked to a team like the Florida Panthers and the New York Islanders, and when it comes to his buddy Artemi Panarin, he's been linked more so to the Panthers, the Islanders, and the Rangers. I'm not really sure it makes sense for the Rangers to look at Bobrovsky Bobrovsky, but the other two teams certainly do make sense, and it's not a given that they end up signing here with the exact same team. But Sergei Bobrovsky did kind of basically confirm that he was in Florida and is on his way to New York, where he's expected to meet with Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders brass there. He had posted a picture on his Instagram showing his boarding pass, which was showing him boarding in Miami and landing in New York. So I guess we will see what happens with Bobrovsky. I really don't think there's a ton of teams out there. I really think it's really just down to the two teams for him, and instead probably the 3 or 4 for Panarin. Of course, they have the same agent now as well, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them end up with a combo deal here. And I still personally believe that the Florida Panthers are the front runners to land both of them. Now, one team that's going to be paying very close attention, according to Elliot Friedman, and makes a lot of sense here to the Bobrovsky contract, is the Tampa Bay Lightning, as other Russian goaltender and Vezina Trophy winner Andrei Vasilevsky is only 1 year away from having his contract up for renewal. So obviously, whatever Bobrovsky gets, Vasilevsky is likely going to be using that as a comparable when he enters into negotiations for his next contract as well. And if Bobrovsky ends up getting a mega deal, we very well might see goaltender salaries back on the rise. Obviously, we saw Carey Price get a mega deal a few years ago, and then after that started to play out not very well in the beginning. Certainly teams really shied away and really wanted to reduce what they were spending on their goalies, and that very well could swing the other way here, depending on this Bobrovsky contract. Certainly going to set the market and might make it tough for other teams and other goalies like Vasilevsky here moving forward. Now, staying with goaltending, we have lots more updates here as well on other goalies. San Jose, apparently, according to Friedman, is looking to move backup goalie Aaron Dell. Now, of course, he also mentions here that there was a potential talk here of a swap between San Jose and Toronto regarding Patrick Marleau, and they wanted to include Aaron Dell, but were not able to. Obviously, it was probably better for the Leafs longer term here to do the trade with Carolina and then have him bought out to make him go to San Jose that way. Obviously, I'm sure San Jose wanted the Leafs to retain probably 40-50% of the salary on Marleau, and they really didn't have the capacity to do that, especially take on another contract. Now, I wouldn't completely rule out the Leafs maybe looking at Dell. They still need a backup goalie. It's not quite clear where they're going to go. They are believed to likely be trading Garrett Sparks, which we really don't know yet. They could choose to hang on to him and not make a move. That is a possibility. But if they do to go down that road, I guess maybe going back to the Sharks here and looking at Aaron Dell might be a possibility. But Elliot Friedman is reporting that the Sharks are looking to move Dell. So we'll see what happens here with him over the summer. But there's certainly the goaltending carousel could continue. Looks as though Brian Elliott's staying in Philadelphia. We did get news here a little while ago that he signed a 1-year contract to remain with the Philadelphia Flyers. So that tells me that obviously Cam Talbot won't be returning to the Flyers there. Of course, they had Elliott, Talbot, and Neuwirth. And when discussed previously, I said I really thought Neuwirth was gone for sure. One of Elliott or Talbot could stay, and then the other would go. And obviously it looks as though that decision has now been made, but Cam Talbot's been linked to the Calgary Flames here as well. It's not quite clear how the Flames are going to proceed. They may or may not re-sign Mike Smith. I don't think a decision's been made, so they are talking to him, but they are also believed to be talking to Talbot as well. They very well could end up with a combo of Riddick and Smith again next year, or possibly Riddick and Talbot. So we will see, but that goaltending carousel continues. Now, outside of Mike Smith possibly returning to Calgary, we don't have any potential other news of where he might land if Calgary decides to go in a different direction. Now, apparently the Edmonton Oilers as well are interested in goaltender Peter Mrazek and Semyon Varlamov of the Avalanche. Now, Varlamov is still talking to the Avs as well. That's not a completely foregone conclusion that he's not going back there. I do think the odds are slimmer, though. I think they're likely going to let Grubauer run with being the starter and might want a cheaper option for a backup. So we'll see how the Avalanche proceed there. But they are having talks. I just have a feeling Varlamov's going to want more money than what they're going to probably be willing to offer to be a backup. But of course, Edmonton had expressed interest in Mrazek before. Of course, the link there is to Ken Holland, who had him in Detroit when he was younger and certainly knows what he's fully capable of. But at the same time, I'm not sure that they can make that work salary cap wise with what they're paying Koskinen. So we'll see, but the Oilers are believed to have interest in both goaltenders, and I don't think trading Koskinen is really going to be an option. So not really sure they can afford either one, but Friedman is reporting that they have interest in both. Taking with the Oilers here for a moment, they also have a lot of interest in winger Brett Connolly, who's been really developing quite nicely over the last number of years and steadily improving with the Washington Capitals. And I think due to his increased performance, has basically priced himself out of Washington. So I guess we will see. Of course, he is the type of player that would make sense for the Oilers to get. His agent has gone on record to say that Edmonton would be a great landing spot for him. They are believed to be having conversations, but I do believe Connolly will have other interests around the league as well. But right now, it looks as though Edmonton might be a front runner to land him. Staying with the Oilers here, one last little tidbit on Jesse Puljujarvi. It's believed that if the Oilers do move him, that he would prefer not to play in another Canadian market, that he might prefer to go to a U.S. Market instead, somewhere where he can kind of fly under the radar here a little bit. Obviously, as you know, the Canadian cities are certainly a hotbed for hockey, and the media really pays a lot of attention and really scrutinizes a lot. And for some players, they just can't handle that or don't want that added stress or added pressure, and playing in a U.S. market where they can be a little bit lesser known might be more preferable. Seems to be the case for Puljujarvi, but unfortunately he has no trade protection. He can't really have a whole lot of say where he goes, if anywhere. So we'll see what happens with him and the Oilers. A couple other quick notes here as well. Wayne Simmonds apparently is getting a ton of interest. Obviously, the fact that the Blues won the Cup and the fact that they played a heavy style of game is certainly helping the case for Wayne Simmonds to get himself a decent contract. Friedman is reporting that Minnesota and Montreal are two teams showing interest, but there is believed to be around 10 or 12 teams showing interest in him as well. And of course, back to Jason Zucker in Minnesota. As we know, he's almost been traded a few times. And Friedman's reporting that at the draft, there was tons and tons of trade rumors about every 10 minutes about Zucker. Of course, nothing has happened here, but it does look as though he will be moved at some point as soon as Minnesota gets a better handle on their future here and can find a trade that they find acceptable. So I still expect him to be a player to keep your eye on for likely being traded sometime in the very near future. Let me know what you think of all these players and where they might end up, and we'll continue the conversation in the comments section. If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's going to be lots of content coming soon here. We're in a very heavy NHL news cycle with trades and free agency, so stay tuned for plenty more content coming soon. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.